The mystery is not as simple as the last time Keira Knightley played a character on a ship.
The rum!
Yes, the rum is gone.
Where's the rum gone?
Hi everyone, if you're new here, my name is Kristen Skeet and I am an independent filmmaker and author, and I spend a lot of my time judging movies that are not mine. Like and subscribe to follow along and be petty with me if you would like. Our main character in The Woman in Cabin 10 is a woman named Laura Blacklock, and Laura is an award-winning investigative journalist played by Keira Knightley, who has just returned from a traumatic overseas assignment. She is looking to cleanse her professional palate. So, naturally, she accepts an invitation to spend a week on a luxury super yacht with absolute f***ed billionaires and her 2 disasters ago ex-boyfriend, Ben. So far, it sounds like things will go exactly as Laura has planned. The trip is hosted by smug billionaire Richard Ballmer, whose wife Anne is terminally ill. Richard is setting up a foundation in his wife's name, using her money that he is only allowed to use because she is alive and allowing him to do so. I wonder if that has anything to do with the plot of this movie. The other billionaires aboard the ship are foundation board members, and the trip is culminating with a spectacular gala event in Norway. Richard has invited Laura and Ben along on the trip to document their good deeds, because what good is philanthropy if the poor people don't know about it? Laura makes the immediate and egregious faux pas of stepping on board the yacht wearing her poor people shoes. These absolute creeps nearly vomit at the sight of Lauren's blue jeans, and this champ uses the word yachticate. As they set sail, Richard makes a grand speech about how, thanks to the billionaire's generous donations, many peasants will now have access to specialty doctors and experimental treatments, and they all applaud themselves while drinking champagne, exactly like I imagine billionaires do when they get together. At this point, this guy shows up. He is infamous rock star Danny Tyler, who is an Ozzy Osbourne, Steven Tyler-esque musician, who is not played by Gary Oldman, even though I'd have bet my next paycheck that this is indeed Gary Oldman dressed as a rock star. Danny is Richard and Anne's friend and the entertainment for the trip and the gala. On the way to dinner, Laura ducks into Cabin 10 to avoid Ben, because despite the fact that everything going on in this movie revolves explicitly around what's going on in Cabin 10, the door to Cabin 10 is completely unlocked and accessible to everyone on board, including the investigative journalist. Inside, Laura startles a blonde woman in a black hoodie, and the woman awkwardly retreats to the bathroom, and Laura turns tail back out to the hallway where Ben has conveniently disappeared. During dinner, Anne's head of security invites Laura to meet with Anne, and of course she says yes. Anne hands Laura a speech she's written where she plans to announce at the gala her plans to give away her entire fortune to cancer research. And I'm sure this has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on in the movie. Anne also tells Laura here that she has stopped all treatments and medications. The women agree to meet again the next night, and Anne heads off to bed. That night, Lauren wakes up and hears a commotion coming from next door, which is Cabin 10. She opens her balcony doors in time to hear a splash, and she goes out to see a woman floating in the water. She sounds the alarms, and protocols are enacted, and the Coast Guard is called. When asked, Laura says she doesn't know who it was in the water, but it must be the woman who is staying in Cabin 10, and then she gets lots of funny looks. Richard is awakened with the news that someone may have gone overboard, and he assures Anne that she can go back to bed and he'll handle it. So all the passengers are eventually accounted for, and Laura is told there's no woman staying in Cabin 10. Laura knows she's not nuts, but nobody else does, so the Coast Guard is canceled and everybody goes back to sleep. The next day, Laura seeks out Anne and asks if it's a good time for them to continue their conversation from the night before. Anne tells Lauren that she's too tired because of all the medications she's taking, and she heads off to bed. It doesn't seem to dawn on Laura here that Anne has told her the night before that she stopped all medications, but it sure dawned on me. Obviously, this is not Anne, and if this is not Anne, then that means that Anne must be the woman who went overboard the night before, and she's been replaced by this woman. I've solved a big chunk of the mystery, but Laura has not yet, even though her job is a literal investigative journalist. So what is the next chunk of the mystery? Who is this woman, and why is she impersonating Anne? And does it have anything to do with the fact that Anne is about to disinherit her husband? Hint, yes. Laura switches into high investigative journalist gear here and crawls over her balcony to Cabin 10 because the captain has finally decided to lock the door of Cabin 10. She searches the room for any sign of the blonde woman, but there isn't any until she goes into the sink drain and finds blonde hair. Laura stashes the gross strain hair in a baggie and heads off to dinner. At the after-dinner party, Danny is entertaining the guests. He asks fake Anne if she remembers the duet they did years ago. Obviously she doesn't, but Richard pipes up and says he sure does remember it. Fake Anne says she's tired and she has to go to bed. Danny begins playing the duet song, and fake Anne says she now remembers the song and thanks Danny. At this point in the movie, the filmmakers are playing this as if the audience shouldn't have figured out by now that this isn't the real Anne. I hadn't yet put together exactly who fake Anne is or why she was impersonating the real Anne, but I knew for sure that this was not the real Anne. Laura is becoming increasingly isolated from the others on the ship, and honestly, this is no loss to her. These billionaires are weird, but it can't be a good feeling to know that everybody around you thinks you're crazy. The next day, with the gross drain hair still in her pocket for safekeeping, Laura is pushed into the yacht's pool and nearly drowns. She insists someone is trying to kill her to silence her about the woman she saw in the water. Danny freaks out here and leaves because he thinks there could be a body on board and he can't afford any more scandals. The billionaires are now super duper mad at Laura because their rockstar entertainment is gone. There comes a knock at Lauren's door. Laura, perhaps starting to wonder if she is going insane, follows this person down into the belly of the ship, which is always a great idea. Nothing but good things happens in the darkened underbelly of a billionaire's yacht. Here she comes face to face with the blonde woman she saw in cabin 10. The woman tells her she's alive and that Laura needs to stop investigating or else he is going to kill her. Laura grabs the woman in frustration and her blonde wig falls off. Laura is now standing in front of Anne. Fake Anne promptly knocks Laura unconscious. While Laura is locked up, she does some pretty good thinking and realizes that the woman who knocked her out is not Anne, but she is someone who is impersonating Anne. Laura realizes that Richard found out that Anne was going to disinherit him and that the real Anne is the woman she saw in the water. Fake Anne's name is Carrie, and she tells Lauren that she was hired by Richard to play Anne for one day in order to change Anne's will. The real Anne caught them when Richard was trying to boff Carrie in cabin 10. Anne understandably becomes upset. Richard panics and he smashes her up against the wall, killing her. Then he yeets her body overboard. Here's another instance where the door for the very important cabin 10 was just unlocked while very important shady things were happening inside. Laura keeps herself hidden and Richard is worried. He orders the doctor to find her and take care of her. The doctor objects, but Richard threatens him and he's like, oh, okay, I'll kill her. Carrie overhears all this and sneaks off to tell Laura that she was right. As the group prepares to disembark to Norway for the gala, Lauren finds the speech that the real Anne allowed her to read the night she died. The doctor, doing his best Michael Myers impression, catches Laura and tries to kill her with some sort of injection, but Ben intervenes and is injected instead, and Lo leaps overboard. R.I.P. to that 2 disasters ago. In Norway, Anne successfully signs the new will. Laura sneaks into the gala building and confronts Anne's head of security and tells her what's going on. The head of security is skeptical, and I can't blame her here, because if Laura's telling the truth, that means the head of security didn't realize that the woman she was hired to protect was killed and replaced with an imposter, and that she had no idea. That's not going to look great on a resume. At the gala, Laura takes over the microphone and reads Anne's letter. The billionaires start to realize that something isn't right. Richard freaks out, grabs a knife, and drags Carrie out to the water. The billionaires do absolutely nothing to help, so it's up to Lauren to save Carrie. Lauren yells at the billionaires as she dashes out that Carrie isn't Anne, that Richard threw Anne off the boat 4 days ago, and they're all like, oh, damn. Just as Richard's about to kill Carrie, the head of security shoots him in the shoulder. Laura finishes the job with a nice bash on his head. Back in London, we see that Lauren has written an article on the saga. An intern tells Lauren that she's the reason she wanted to intern there. She loves how the article wasn't just about the bad things that Richard did, that Lauren found the good in the story. In the final shot, we see that Carrie is back home with her daughter. That's all. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.